Hello, Dr. Vikki Petersen here. If you follow my YouTube videos, you'll know that we've talked about some anecdotal studies that came out regarding children having type 1 diabetes, and the specific study that I most recently discussed, the child was put on a gluten-free diet and the type 1 diabetes went into remission. The child had never been put on insulin, and in the 2.5 years that they followed the child did not ever need insulin. What happened after that, of course, we don't know, but it was a nice length of time that this child didn't require insulin. We also know that celiac disease and type 1 diabetes share similar genes, so they do tend to occur together more commonly. People with celiac disease are more at risk for type 1 diabetes. So there's been some question about how the gluten-free diet can affect type 1 diabetes. We've also learned in the past year or so that autoimmune diseases, which celiac falls in that category as well as type 1 diabetes, are affected, it seems, from an unhealthy small intestine. So that unhealthy small intestine allows inflammatory type particles, if you will, chemicals to get into the bloodstream, and it can cause an autoimmune reaction to occur where the immune system is attacking your own body, parts of your own body. So of course in type 1 diabetes what it's attacking is your pancreas. In rheumatoid arthritis it's attacking your joints, etc. This particular study is brand new. It's only 3 weeks old, the end of August this year, 2012. Came to us out of Denmark, and they worked with mice in this study. But what was so interesting was part that we knew, part we didn't know. So the part we kind of suspected was that they found that these mice, when they were put on a gluten-containing diet, had more aggravating inflammation associated with their gut and creating more of an impact on type 1 diabetes. So that was kind of expected. But what was interesting was that a gluten-free diet actually was not the same as someone who didn't have a problem with gluten, but that a gluten-free diet was kind of protective. So instead of inflammation and maybe having no inflammation, instead on the gluten-free diet these mice saw anti-inflammatories being created. So that's a protective response. So it wasn't just that it went from bad with gluten to neutral without. Without gluten, it went to a new level of great. Okay, so it was a protective response that was seen in the bloodstream and monitoring these inflammatory type particles, or the antithesis of that, which is the anti-inflammatory. So very, very interesting and certainly provocative when it comes to what we've felt, which is that gluten is a very strong possible initiator of autoimmune disease, and to find out certainly if type 1 diabetes is in the family, let alone celiac disease, but certainly as soon as anybody is diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, to find out if they're gluten intolerant right away is critical. In that one child I mentioned earlier, the child didn't even show up for celiac, but they took him off gluten anyway. They didn't explain in the study how that came about, but they did, and of course, as I mentioned, he never needed insulin, at least during the course of time they were following him. So certainly it's, I feel prevention is a great way to go, and finding out if your child has a gluten intolerance and removing that gluten from the diet could be a very, very protective thing to do. Now we talk about children because more commonly with type 1 diabetes it is diagnosed in childhood, but some people aren't diagnosed until their 20s or 30s. So just something to keep in mind. Please share it with those you know, and I hope this was informative. Please send me your questions. I love to hear from you, and until next time, I wish you very good health.